What's up, everybody? Welcome back to this episode of the Xtra Mile Podcast. Man, we just kind of went right into it, didn't we? That's pretty crazy. Okay, cool. But listen, it's awesome. Again, as I've talked about a few times now, we're bringing the podcast here local. So this next person's got a great story. She's got an awesome journey that she's been on in her life, and I can't wait for you guys to hear it. So stay tuned right after this.
The Xtra Mile, Mr. Brightside. Yeah, I know you heard me. Stop this movement that's moving. Well, you gon' have to murder me. Overcome adversity. My whole life, Bobby Jones, Mr. Brightside. And this is the Xtra Mile.
Woo! All right, guys. So this is like an energy booster, you know what I mean? Gets us hype a little bit. All right, guys. I want to introduce you guys to a friend of mine named Kelly Hurd. She is also a Master Networks member here local, but she has a cool story. I remember a couple of years ago when we were forming the Smyrna chapter. You had the opportunity to do a showcase, and it was one of the few times that I got to visit that chapter, and I was like, really intrigued. So I'm not going to do any spoilers, but it's cool. And it just goes to show you just never know somebody's story. Like you can look at somebody and you can do all of your assumptions, but you just have to ask the questions. You have to give somebody the opportunity to really tell you what they're made of and what they're made from. So hello, Kelly. Welcome to the show. Tell everybody a little bit about you, and then we'll get into kind of your story.
Sure. So I first want to say thank you for inviting me. When I got the invite, I was like, I am an accountant, and nobody wants to hear me talk about taxes. Like, this is not going to, I don't know what he's thinking. And then I went to your podcast, which I listened to before, but I read the little description of it, and it was like, entrepreneurs and business leaders that have overcome adversity. And I was like, this is it. I am meant to be here. I'm supposed to be here. There's a reason that this is happening right now.
Oh yeah.
So I think your invite came at the perfect time for me.
Perfect. Yeah. It is interesting how things can happen at the right times. There's been, times where I've been invited to do something or asked to do something, and I'm like, it's not the right time. And then later it was like perfect, you know, or I've asked other people in the same setting, and another time just worked so much perfectly, because we're in a better place to communicate that too, and a better place to deliver that message.
Right. Yes.
And so that's awesome. So you spilled the beans. You're an accountant, right?
Yeah.
You're actually the second accountant that we've had on the show this season, which is weird because I didn't think about that until this moment. But both of you guys have cool stories, totally different. But it is interesting. Like, everybody talks about that accountant position like being one of the most like boring things to try to talk about, but I get intrigued by it because most of the tax structure stuff that's going to help you with tax liability, like that now is much more exciting to me than it once was.
Yes.
So
as long as you have the right audience, taxes are amazing. I mean, you get a group of accountants, everyone loves to talk about taxes, or business leaders or things like that, and it's a good, but just the general person's like, taxes, I don't want to listen to that.
Right.
But if you can get the right audience, it's a good topic.
I have a friend of mine who he talks about this often. He's like, listen, everybody thinks that like the tax code was written to take your money. It's actually written so that you can learn how to keep some of your money and structure properly so that you're not getting robbed once a year, or quarterly. But anyway, all right. So let's talk about your journey. Where are you from?
So I live on the eastern shore of Maryland.
Is that where you were born and raised?
Born and raised. Okay. I haven't left. I went to college in Salisbury, Maryland, so I've never really left the state.
Okay.
And I'm still there. I don't know if I'm going to forever be there, but I'm there for now.
Yeah. So, but you travel a lot, right? Don't you travel a lot?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I started in 2018 or 17. I decided that I wanted to travel and see the world. When I was little, we didn't really do that with my family a lot. And I kept asking all my friends, who wants to go here with me? Who wants to go here with me? Who wants to go there? And nobody could ever do it. And so finally I was like, if I wait for somebody to go with me, I'm never going to go. Ooh. And my first trip was to China, and it was through the Newcastle County Chamber of Commerce. So
really?
I went with a group of people. Like the trip was completely organized, but I didn't know any of the people.
Gotcha.
So that was my first like solo experience. I had to make friends with the people on the trip, but we were all together. And then after that, I thought, this is cake.
Did you know any of them before?
No, none of them.
Oh, wow.
No. So my mom and my son was 3 or 4, dropped me off at the Wilmington, like right on the water. They had a bus waiting for us that was going to take us to New York to fly out. And my mom and my son dropped me off. And my mom told me, like I might even tear up. My mom told me later, my son, like right on her shoulder as the bus was pulling away, was like, I love my mom so much. Like he knew that this was a big deal, like that I was going and I hadn't been away from him and that I was doing this. And he probably felt some of my anxiety, like,
for sure.
What the heck am I doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, you could sense that at the very least.
Yes, he was like, oh, I love my mom so much, and I was like, okay. So, but after that, it was like, this is it. If I can do this, I can do it. So I've been to a few other countries by myself, like no trips, just made friends.
That's so great.
Go and travel, and I'll go to a bar by myself or a restaurant, or I'll book like drinking tours or food tours, and I'll just make friends. And that's
this is so crazy because there's so many people out there that are just they can't even go out to eat by themselves. Like they can't even, you know what I mean? And like I think that it's so like liberating. It's so like empowering to just travel. Now I've never traveled to China by myself or even across even overseas at all, but I have traveled all over the country by myself. And it is like, it's empowering. It's like, it makes you like feel like you can take on the world because you are, you know what I mean? Like
it truly is. And
so, but can we go back to like thoughts up to it? Like once you've got into that spot, you kind of realize that, but you talked about your son feeling your anxiety, but let's talk about that for you going into that first trip to China with a group of strangers.
Yeah, China would not have been my first pick, but what happened, I was sitting at work one day and I don't know how I found it. The Newcastle County like thing came up and it was like, oh, trip to China. You have to book today's the last day to register. And I texted my mom. I was like, hey, can you watch my son while I go to China? And she was like, ha, yeah, sure. So I got home that night and I was like, Mom, I booked this trip to China. And she cried. She was like, I didn't know you were serious. I was like, yeah. I mean, I had one day, so it wasn't a lot of like thinking time. I just did it. And then afterwards I was like, okay, I'm going to China. Yeah. So it just turned out, I don't know. I guess I didn't really, the story of my life, I didn't think it through. It turned out great. Man, but
that's crazy. But I'll tell you what, like, I'm envious of you, especially because, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are too, because I think maybe the thought has entered our mind, but none of us have ever been so bold to act on it. And
well, I will tell anyone, anytime they ask about me traveling, you have to go somewhere by yourself. I don't care if it's in the country. I don't care if it's, an hour from your house, you get a hotel room, you stay by yourself, you go out to eat by yourself. You learn so much about yourself and what you're capable of. So I went to South Korea and I missed a flight and the bus, it was just, one of those trips that just, happened. And I got on the train, which I live on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. We don't have public transportation. I have no idea how to use a train.
Yeah.
So I get on the train with my card and somewhere between my first stop and my next stop, I lose my card, which I never lose anything. How this happened, I don't know. I lost my card and I was like, it's fine because I'm already in the train terminal. Like I can just get on the next train. That was not true. You had to go through a turnstile with your card. So I was inside of the train station and the turnstiles were like the ones that come up and down. So I couldn't walk through to get out, to get to the other side to buy another ticket.
Oh, shit.
So I'm standing there. Nobody speaks English. I am standing there trying to stop people. Like, can you let me out? But they would have had to swipe their card, which cost them money, and nobody would let me out. So finally this woman at a bodega was like, that's a handicapped, entrance. You just push the button, it'll let you out. I'd been standing there for 15 minutes trying to get out of this thing. So I finally got out, got my card, got back in. But when I got back, I was telling the story at work. And one of the girls I work with was like, I would have just sat down there and died. I would have just sat down and died. She's like, I would never have made it out of there.
No, but you think you'd do that until you're in the situation.
What I'm saying. Yes, until you face it, until you have to do it, you have no idea. And so that is, I think that's not the beginning of my fearless stories. But China was definitely the first of I'll never know until I do it, until I'm faced with doing it. Then it's like and now I purposefully find things that scare me or that I'm like, I don't think I can do that. And I'm like, well, if I think I can't do it, then I have to do it because now I think I can.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. That's good. I like that. That's going to make for an awesome life too. Yes. So, all right. So let's go beyond before that. Okay. What brings us to a point where we think traveling to China on our own is going to be good for us?
Sure. So I was in my early 20s, so between 21 and 24, and I was in an abusive relationship. So it started out mildly emotional, mildly verbally abusive too. It's kind of like, you know, it was just like, okay, this is okay. It's fine. It's not that terrible. And then we found out that I was pregnant. And then it turned extremely verbally and emotionally abusive. And then my son was born. And so at this point in time, I was working part-time for my mom. So my mom owns 3 H&R Blocks. So I was working part-time for her. I just graduated college. I was going to Wilmington for my master's degree. So I was in the direction of becoming an accountant. That's where my goal was, but I was still kind of in that, like, just graduated college, don't really know what I'm doing phase, like, still early 20s. And this relationship.
There's water there if you need some.
Thank you. So once we found out that I was pregnant and we had our son, I guess I would say, you know, like I said, I tend to go big or go home. So we had one physical altercation that almost took my life.
Oh, wow.
I ended up in the hospital. I was waiting for to have surgery on my eye. And, you know, when you're going through this, you don't necessarily see how traumatic or extreme it is. You know, it's like, okay, we're going through this. We're going to survive this. We're going to get through on the other side. And it took me a long time, a couple of years, to figure out that I almost lost my life that night. And it actually took, so after that, we went through custody and criminal and a whole bunch of, I would just say, hell with the judicial system. It was awful. It was terrible for a victim, the whole situation. So not only did I go through this traumatic experience where I was a victim, I then was victimized through the court system because it felt like no one was on my side. My first set of lawyers, he was an older gentleman. I think he was more custody, more family oriented. I don't think he had experience, especially in the situation that I was going through, or to be able to support a young female mother. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, for sure.
So my family and I made the decision, and we hired 3 powerhouse female lawyers from Annapolis. Ooh. And they changed, I swear, the trajectory of the situation as well as my life. They, when we first brought them on, you know, they sat me down and they showed me the pictures of myself, and they were like, Kelly, one more punch to the face and you wouldn't have been able to see, or one more hit to your head and you could have had brain damage, or 30 more seconds, 10 more seconds of him strangling you and you wouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. Look, I have chills. This is my own story and I have chills.
So crazy.
And that's when I was like, holy cow. Like, I knew, you know, verbally during this altercation, he had told me he was going to take my life, but it never really sunk in until those women sat me down and said, this is how close you were to losing your life. And in that moment, I was like, I'm still here. There's a reason I'm still here. There has to be something that I am here for. So I have to be made for more than what I went through. So that was kind of that initial experience. So backtrack a little bit. So right after this happened, so it was August 1st that this happened. You know, I was home for a couple of weeks. I was visibly, you know, hurt. So I didn't really want to go out in public. So I was home. I was living with my mom at the time. I had moved back in with my mom, and I was working with her. I was living with her. I was working with her. She's my son's grandmother. She's an amazing grandmother. She's my mother. She's an amazing mother. She was one of my best friends then. She's extremely one of my best friends now. And I was like, too much mom. Right. I love her, but I had to pick and choose where I wanted her in my life. And I thought that maybe my career wasn't the best place for her because I needed her in other places. So it was probably 2 weeks after this happened. I was in my bedroom there, and I was just, in my mind, I was like, I'm getting out of here. I'm getting out of Kent County. I live in Kent County, Maryland. I'm getting out of here. I'm going to go anywhere that I can go. I just need to get away. I need separation. I need something. And I got online and I applied to jobs across the country. Like I applied anywhere that I thought would take me. I was like, this is I have to just get out of here. I have to do anything that I can. So I got a call back from a firm in Dover that they wanted to do an interview. And so I was like, this is it. Like, I don't even remember if anybody else called me back. I just know that they did. And I was like, this is it. I have to have this job. It's close enough I can stay home. It's far enough away that I have separation from what I'm going through. And I mean, at that point in time, I couldn't even go to the grocery store without somebody asking me, oh, how are you? Or how, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, I just want some separation from that. So I'll tell you, Bobby, for that interview, they called me in. I stayed up for like 2 nights And I looked up every interview question that they could possibly ask me. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Like, what animal would you be? Like, what color describes you? And I answered all of them, wrote them down, memorized every single question because I was going to nail this interview because I needed this. I needed this, not because I needed the job, but because I needed this for me.
The shift. Yeah.
And when I went in there, he didn't ask me a single question that I had prepared for. He actually just very much like this had a conversation with me, and I was like, that was the easiest interview of my life because I had prepared. And
what kind of animal would you have been?
Oh my gosh. A fox.
A fox. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
There is some
It's an
spiritual
elegant creature, really.
significance to that, and I forget it right off the top of my head. I just heard this the other day.
Okay.
But there is. You should look it up. There's
We'll
some
come back to it. We'll
significance
put it
a
on the
fox.
screen or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Go back. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Put me on the spot there. This is like 7 years ago. So they offered me a job, a position, and I remember sitting down with the managing partner at the time. Well, hold on, one other thing. So the day of my interview was a couple weeks out from our incident, and I had just had surgery on my face. And the night before, my eyes were still bloodshot. And I was like, man, I'm gonna have to go in this interview. They're gonna ask questions. They're gonna know. The day I woke up, my face was completely clear. The day of my interview, I was completely clear, and I was like, okay, I can do this. But so when I was sitting down with the managing partner, she was like, so do you want to talk about benefits? And I was like, no, I don't want to talk about anything other than you offering me a job and when I can start. That's it. That's all I need. So that was the start of the change in my life, I think. And then from there, I started my career.
Was that for you? I mean, it sounds like, again, working with your mom, it was like this start to empowerment for Kelly.
Yes.
This was your journey to
That's
freedom and liberation.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it started more so of, I felt like I was trying to get away. I wanted to run.
Right.
But I ended up running into something that I needed and I didn't know that I needed.
Yeah.
So, so I spent 5 years with that firm and completely changed my life 100%. And they probably don't even know this. If they ever listen to this, they now know that opportunity changed who I was and who I am today. I mean,
sure.
So I went back and got my master. I was finishing my master's degree at night. I was now driving 50 minutes to Dover, back and forth, 7 to 8 hour work days, finishing my master's degree. I had an infant son at the time. We were living with my mom, so she definitely helped, my mom and my dad. And then, so I graduated and I went to sit for my CPA exam. I just was like, I'll give myself a year. The CPA exam is 4 parts. Depending on how you take it, it can take, longer or shorter.
Right.
But I said, I only have a year of my life that I can dedicate to this. I'm going to give myself a year.
Shit.
So I would drive to work an 8-hour day, come home. My mom, my dad, and I would, hand off child, dishes, dinner, and then I would go in my room for 3 hours every night and study. And then I'd spend an entire day on the weekend studying. And I passed all 4 parts of the exam in exactly a year.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
And I mean, in comparison, most people, it takes how long?
It depends. So a lot of people will take it right out of school, so they don't start working first, and they can take it in a couple of months because that's their full time.
Right. Yeah.
I was being a mom and going to school and going to work, and so it was a little bit different.
Fair.
I guess in perspective, most people fail most sections at least once. I only failed one section, and I only failed it because I took it during tax season.
Oh shoot.
And I didn't have enough time to dedicate to it. And then when I retook the test, I got a 92. And that was my last one. That was my last one that I needed within my year that I'd given myself, my time frame.
Nice. And so there's a lot of discipline to that. We talk about this often because people they'll say they want something, but without a deadline or without some kind of urgency,
right.
Applied to it, it doesn't work. And so most of the time people are like, okay, I'm going to set this goal, but when I'm done doing this, I'll do something else. The problem is if you take that something else that you just pick a start date for that, and it closes your gap for this, right? And so I like that you gave yourself a year, not for a very specific reason other than you just didn't want to spend your life trying to pursue that thing, right?
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I just picked a year. At that time, we were also still going through our custody and criminal battles.
Right.
So I'm doing all of these things, and I made a choice to take all of the pain and the hurt and the, you know, all of that emotion that I was feeling from that. And I stood on top of it, I'll say, as like momentum of, I had heard for so long that I was worthless. My life was worth nothing. I'd accomplished nothing in life. All of these things that I had been told that had seeped into me and that I'd taken as truth. I took all of that and I said, this is not going to be who I am.
Right.
I'm going to prove, essentially I started out, I'm going to prove to him that I am worth something and that he didn't have a right to tell me that I was worth nothing.
That's right.
And then it took, you know, a couple of years as I was moving through. I got my CPA, got promoted in the company, within the firm. And then I was like, I'm doing this for me. This is no longer for somebody else. This is 100% for me. Like, we've reached the point where I don't need to prove myself. I've proved myself, which I didn't even have to. I should never have had to feel like I needed to prove myself, but I did. And then I reached the point of like that flip of like, I did this to prove myself to someone, but now I'm going to prove myself to me because I know that I deserve it. So it was a, you know, a trajectory that just changed throughout the course of how I went through that experience.
I think we're going to go into this a little bit more. And I want to preface it this way because obviously I've never been on the receiving end of something that you experienced. However, my wife and I, we've been together since I was 16. She was 15. At that time of my life, I was not a good person. A lot of people that are listening know that. And there was some very narcissistic behaviors that I had. Having 2 daughters now and really being able to reflect on those moments, there was a lot in me that just didn't want to see this person that I was attracted to, right? It was interesting how I had to feel like because of my own insecurities, I had to break her down so that I could have comfortable conversation with her. Mm-hmm. And it is a horrible way to think about it, but it in my own opinion, by the way, this is just my theory,
sure.
Okay? And I'm sure that there's going to be exceptions and differences in your story. But what I've seen and what I've been worried about for my girls as they grow older and start to date and things like that, going back to the playground, like just simply picking on girls or teasing girls on a playground, in some ways is that same mentality where we are essentially attracted to someone. We tease them as our way of like flirting or pick on them as our way of flirting. But really it's because by the simple law of attraction, we've put them up here on this pedestal, right? Like we almost see them there. And our insecurities make us feel like we're not worthy. So in order for us to have this comfortable conversation, we need to break this person down. Right. Now, obviously, that's a very innocent level of that in comparison to what you experienced. Right. But it does get to this point later, from what I've seen and seen with other people, is like when men enter, a lot of men, not all men, obviously there are exceptions, thank goodness to this, but a lot of time when men enter into a relationship, they have this desire to feel superior, because the alternative is not to be as good as the other person almost. Does that make sense? This is not an excuse, by the way, but this is what I've kind of like just observed with people. And so in order for them to maintain superiority, we have to break down the other person. Right. And it's all the things you were talking about. It's like, I have to make this person feel like they can't do it without me. They're not good enough. It's, you're not capable of anything without me. And it's like all these horrible things that are said. But when you hear them enough, you're like, could this be true about me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, my mom will tell you from a child, I was very strong. I've always been a strong female. I think, I don't know, I was little and someone told her like, she called it spirited. She's very spirited. So my mom still jokes about that. Like, you're very spirited.
I like that.
And I do think, you know, I was very strong, and that's probably, I will say, I truly think, you know, cause he'd been in relationships before. I do think I was strong enough that I fall back. I finally fall back. And when I fought back.
And also he probably felt threatened by how strong you were too.
So when I fought back, you know, with my emotions, you know, or whatever it was very discomforting because then he didn't have control and I was taking control away from him. But at the same time. Which
should be okay, but for the wrong person, that's like.
Yeah. So,
or the wrong person at the wrong time.
I tell I mean, and right now, so many men, the thing is strong women. Men love strong women. Men love strong women. And I'm like, but do you really? Do you understand the full concept of what comes with strong women? Like, it's fun to say we're great. I mean, we are great because we don't need you. We don't need you for anything.
100%.
Nothing at all.
100%.
So that's great on our side.
I mean, that was a little direct to me.
I was really feeling that one.
No, you're good. I'm kidding. No, listen, as a father of 2 daughters, that's an inspiring thing for them to hear as well. So please speak it with confidence.
A man recently that I went on a date with, he was like, it's amazing. He was like, you don't need anyone. You just want someone. And I'm like, dear Jesus, really? Like, shouldn't everyone be,
right.
Why is that such an anomaly? That should not be an anomaly. And I'm probably not. I probably just wear it more outwardly than other women do.
Yeah.
Because I have consciously made the decision that I don't need anyone to do anything in life. I am completely happy and content in my life with my son by myself. If you're not going to bring value to that, I have no need for you.
Man, this is powerful, man. we talk about this often, and one of the things that I love about this conversation, and I go to an extreme degree with this because the self-love journey should exclude others, right? Because how could it be self-love if you're dependent on the existence or involvement in your life of others, right? And so there's an exercise that I challenge people with, and it's tough, but it's really imagining all the people that are super important to you, right? And if they weren't, like, if for some reason they weren't in your life, could you still find happiness in you? And it's a tough challenge, especially for parents, right? And it's like, we love our kids and we want, nothing but the best for them and to be involved in nothing but the best for them for the rest of our lives. Right. But I've seen numerous instances where mother just super dedicated to being an incredible mom. And then, in their early 20s, this kid decides that he just never wants to talk to their mom again. And knock on wood that ever happens to anybody, because I couldn't imagine it. But we aren't in control of that, right? Even as parents. And we especially with a spouse or a loved, a significant other, we've heard these stories all the time where somebody just like one day they just never came back, or they just walked out and was like, I'm out of here. And so when we place so much of our happiness or even our self-worth on the dependency of somebody else being involved in our lives, it's a dangerous thing, because it is susceptible to them making a decision that's out of our control and being gone one day. So I do love the fact that you've gone down that journey, especially with the idea of a boyfriend or a husband being able to maintain your own self-worth, self-love. The journey that Heather and I have been on, it is kind of crazy, because like I said, we all know I was a shitbag through the things that I did early in my life, just in general, but I couldn't imagine being with that version of me either in a relationship. Right. And so there were, not to the degree that you experienced, but there was a lot of me trying to establish myself as the superior individual in our relationship. And then to go back and rebuild on that it's hard. And so when you're going through that empowerment conversation, like Heather's, created her own career that is hers. And there's so much self-worth that comes with every little accomplishment that builds her up and just reassures her that she could do this, like, probably better without me, but she can definitely do it on her own. And so like it's so empowering. It provides so much self-worth and it provides so much self-love that spills over into every other part of your life. It does. In every other part of your life, like the abundance that you can have with other people when you are whole is just totally different. When you're broken down or in a spot of low self-worth in general, it spills over in other ways. Yeah.
So, kind of going back to when I first started my career at the firm here in Dover, that was hard for me in itself because I knew no one there. Yeah. So I was going into this environment. I knew no one. This was my first real career job. I had no idea what was expected of me. I knew nothing. And that in itself pushed me outside of my comfort zone. And I had to go, make these connections with people and do things to try to, build out my name and who I was and what I was doing there, because I wanted a career as a CPA, wanted a career as an accountant there in that, market. And I didn't. Now,
were you extroverted? I know you said your mom said you were spirited, but were you extroverted in school? No.
So that's the funny, I went back and forth but I was very dependent. I was very dependent on other people. Like I would never have traveled by myself. I would never have, I wouldn't go to the grocery store by myself in college. Like my friend had to come with me, and just very dependent on other people in the way that I lived and for my value. I depended on other people, which is 100% why I believe I ended up in the relationship that I did, because I needed someone to give me value. And in those situations, the opposite of the downgrading of someone is that they give you extreme value too.
Right.
So you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. You're amazing. You're so smart. And then in the next sentence, but you're worthless, you know? So it's like, it's a whole mind game of like manipulation of giving someone exactly what they want and then taking it away.
And if you don't mind, it's like, okay, there's worth in being here in this relationship because there are the words that are saying that I mean something to him, but the idea that I'm not worth anything to anybody else, so I better stay here in this spot that I have worth in.
Yes.
Oh, it's freaking.
And I heard that too. You know, he said, no one else is going to want you. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? No one else, you know? And to me, I'm like, holy crap.
Nobody else is going to want me?
No one in the world. I'm like, I have to stay here because, you know, and looking back, you know, my mom, after all of this happened, my mom was very much like, why did you stay?
Yeah.
Why did you stay? And I'm like, until you go through it, you will never understand. It is a mind. It is a manipulation of your mind where you feel you have to be there. There's nowhere else that I can be. I have to be there. And I am someone, I don't give up. I don't give up on anything.
Yeah.
Very seldom will you ever see me
Gift
give
and
up.
a curse.
Maybe if you asked me to run like, I don't know, a marathon, I might give up on that.
Yeah.
But I don't give up. So in my head, I was like, I can fix this. I'm not giving up on this because I can make it better. You know, if I do this, I can make this situation better. If I don't make him mad, or if I don't do anything, or if I don't go here because he's going to get mad that I went here, then I can fix this.
Yeah.
And it completely isolated me from the rest of my life. I was living in this bubble of what he had created for me, and that was it. That's all I had.
It's tough. I sidetracked you because you were talking about when you were assigned the responsibility of building relationships in the firm.
Yes.
When you were given that.
And I don't know where I was going with that. So part of it is like.
Well, we were talking about the self-worth thing, which I was going to ask you, like when you first got that job, was that like when you got the green light from that, like that sense of self-worth that happens, that little bit of pride that you're like, okay. And now what, right? Like,
so, I don't want to cry about this either, but my mom, so I was working for my mom. She was really kind of upset that I had left. And my mom is my best friend, but she did not support me when I left that job for my new one.
Of course. I mean, I think in hindsight, that might be understandable.
And she said to me, you're never going to make it.
Oh, no.
She said,
that's not understandable.
You're not going to make it working full time. And gosh, if she listens to this, she is going to be heartbroken but you know what? It was probably the best thing I needed to hear because that again, I took that and added it to my pile of like all of this stuff. And I stood on it and I was like, watch this, watch me make it. She is my biggest supporter now. Her and I are very different in that I'm going to jump first and I'll ask questions later. My mom's never jumping. Ever. Yeah. She's not jumping anywhere. Like nothing is going to happen.
Nothing, not even some hopscotch.
No. No.
So I don't want to interrupt you, but I have to ask this question because the chips on the shoulder were enough to get you started. What's keeping you fueled now? Me, nothing else. That I want to do it, that I know that I can do it. There's nowhere else I'd rather be or anything I'd rather be. And now, so I had just recently had a conversation with someone. I made a friend in Master Networks, and her and I were sitting, and all of this spilled out of me one night. We were sitting, and we ran a 5K together. We'd just been in Master Networks. And she was like, "Oh, I'll run a 5K with you." I was like, "Cool." And then afterwards, we talked for like 2 hours, sitting there on this park bench. Everyone had left. We're sitting here, and my whole story like fell out. And I was like, I need to be sharing my story. Yes. And she had cried. She was like, I'll tell you this other thing that she said I really needed to share. It gave her, I have chills. It had given her chills. And she was like, you do. Why are you, what you need to be sharing your story. Yeah. You have so much value in what you're saying and so much that you've gone through. And so that I've been holding on to that for so long that I want to help other people. Yeah. I just haven't gotten there yet. And I didn't know what was holding me back. And now I'm like, what is holding? Nothing. There's nothing that's holding me back other than I just didn't want to put in the effort. And then
literally a week later is when I got your invite for this. And I was like, this is it. This is a sign. That's why I said this is a sign that
things
this is where
happen for
I
a
need
reason.
to be. And I have so much I
and
want to help people with.
Yeah. There's some advice that Chaz Wilson gave me about my story, and actually I've heard it from a couple other people too. It's like, just never fatigue in telling your story, because you'll think that people have heard it enough and that they won't want to hear it again. And it's so far from the truth. Like, think about the best movies you've seen.
Yeah,
You've watched them over and over and over, and you know what's going to happen every single time, but you're still like, oh, watch this part, right? People want to hear your story.
I also feel
and don't stop telling it.
Like, when you tell your story, do you feel when you tell your story that new parts come out, or like new things that you didn't realize? So last night I was like prepping for this, because, you know, I am very organized. I prep and I ran through like in my head, I was like, what am I going to say? What do I want to say? And I was like, oh my gosh, I need like 8 hours.
Yeah.
I need 8 hours to say what I want to say. So it's like, I can, you know, break it down for you and tell you the highlights. And then later I could tell you the same story and jump in on a different part than what I've jumped in on now. But I do want to say this, because this is really important to me. So when I was sitting with her, I told her, so my ex, my son's father, he was charged and convicted. He took a plea for 2nd-degree assault. I truly believe he should have had 1st-degree assault. Permanent damage to my body is one of those. And I had that. So I have an implant in my eye that had to be, one of my bone was broken, and then they had to replace it. So he took a plea, 2nd-degree assault, 30 days house arrest.
Wow.
And, you know, at the time,
1st-degree assault's what, a 2-year minimum mandatory?
It's felony,
Yeah. Okay.
Any jail time, I think, you know, in my hindsight, you know, it's 2020. At the time, I was very emotional, and I just no one was helping me. I had no one to say, why are you letting this plea
And how
go
long
through?
ago was this again, Kelly?
7 years.
Okay.
Nobody was telling me, you know, don't let this plea go through. Like, go to court, you know, take it to a jury trial, do whatever, you know, push this. I had 3 different states' attorneys at this time. Like, it was just turnover, and nobody wanted to do anything.
Right.
And I had to press charges myself.
Yeah.
They would not press charges on him. But, so, you know, him and I, we have a decent relationship now for our son. We can communicate. And this is one other thing I want to say, but my son recently said to me, he asked, you know, why are you, because we separated when he was 3 months old. He doesn't know us together. He was like, why are you and my dad not together? And I was like, some people just aren't meant to be together. They just don't get along in the way that a relationship should be. And he said, but Mom, you guys are so happy when you're around each other. And to some people, their initial reaction is, oh my gosh, like, why are you happy around him? And I'm like, I am so proud of that, that my child sees happiness and not hate or, you know, he doesn't see us holding grudges against each other. He doesn't see us arguing. He sees happiness. And that was one of my biggest goals, was that my child survives this in a healthy way. The other side of that,
I think that's big, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's just that there's so much of your own strength in that he's not familiar with your story yet, right?
No, he has not. He knows nothing at this point.
But one day he will, right? One day he'll become aware of this, and your ability to communicate with his father is going to mean so much to him at that time. And so that's big.
Yeah. So when this all started, you know, with the criminal and all of that was going on, I very much told him, I said, we're going to keep our what's going on with our child separate from what's going on in the courts. Yeah. Whatever's happening in court, you can talk to my lawyer. You can go to my lawyer. We can sit down with our lawyers. We can talk about it. We're not going to do that on handoffs. We're not going to talk about that here. I mean, that was after he had 3 months after this. He had pushed and pushed and pushed until finally my lawyers got involved and were like, you're tampering with a witness. Like, and I didn't know any better because I didn't have those until those good lawyers stepped in, those strong female women stepped in and were like, he can't talk to you right now. And I was like, really? I had no, you know what I mean? He can't tell me that he's going to hold custody against me if I don't drop the criminal. Like, he can't tell me that? I had no idea.
Gosh.
So I was like, okay.
This guy I mean, again, it sounds like he's matured and learned a lot from this too.
He's come a long way.
But master manipulator at the time.
It was.
Master manipulator.
It was a very, very stressful situation. So, you know, I was going through all of that and I just wanted it over. I wanted it done. I wanted to move on with my life. I had this new job. I was starting my career. I was excited for things that I could do in the future. I just wanted it over. So I allowed the plea to go through. We never really talked about it. It's been 7 years. Recently we were on the phone, and my son wasn't around, and I don't even know how it got brought up, But I thought, you know, it's been 7 years. I think at this point we can have an adult conversation if there's anything that we need to say that needs to be let go of. And I told him, I think the judicial system did not do me justice.
Right.
I said, and I talked to him, and he talked to me almost as if it wasn't us. Like, we talked about the situation, and I was like,
oh, wow.
you should have had a much worse punishment than you had for what you did. And he said to me, and this is the epitome of what I have been going for in my entire life. He said, Kelly, you gave me the worst punishment that anyone can give. And I was like, how in the heck did I do that? He was like, after all of that, you treated me like a human, and you treated me with respect. He said, that is the worst thing that I feel. That,
oh, wow.
you know, because to him, it's like, and so that is his growth.
Because he didn't deserve that.
Right. That is his growth, and that is my growth. And that was my success in life. I have succeeded because that is what I wanted to be. That I didn't hate him. I don't hate him.
Yeah.
My family went through, you know, they had a lot of hate and anger, especially, you know, it's somebody you love that got hurt. They hated. And then finally I said to them, I was like, I don't hate him. I don't hate him. I don't hold any ill will against him, because if I did, who's that going to hurt?
You.
Not him. He's not going to feel that if I hate him. It does nothing but hurt me. And then, you know, my child, it would hurt me. It would hurt my child. And I was like, I don't hate him. And so my family has gotten a little bit better about that, because they can see, you know, that I'm not going to hold this. And I don't like to say everything happens for a reason. I wish no one had to go through traumatic experiences, but I would not change anything for the world. I would not go back now and change that, because I would not be who I am today if that hadn't happened to me.
Oh, there's so much to extract from this. I love the forgiveness conversation. I'm such a big advocate for understanding that when you choose to hold a grudge towards anybody, it is only hurting yourself and impacting yourself. Yes. It is amazing how much hate people carry towards someone when someone's name comes up and they just go off the handle, and you're like, you got some stuff internally to work on here that's holding you back, bro. Yeah. And so that conversation alone, hopefully we can clip that piece, because that was so well explained with such a great example. Because I'm sure there's a ton of people. And how long do you think it took from that point to where you forgave him? Would you say that you've forgiven him?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say, like I said,
because we all have different ways of identifying this, but I've observed it, and the way that I observed it through listening was forgiveness, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
but the forgiveness is not because he deserved it, because he doesn't.
Right.
It's because forgiveness is always something internally that you're giving to someone else. I'm giving it to you. Yeah. You don't deserve it, or you're not asking for it, but I can give it to you because that heals me.
Correct.
So I have forgiven him.
Yes.
For me.
Right.
For what happened.
And so many people think that when you forgive somebody, like, you're supposed to welcome them back into your life in a capacity that they once were. And that's just not true. In fact, most of the time it is quite the opposite. And forgiveness is required to really create that healthy gap. Right. The other thing that you said, and I'm trying to go back to it. Gosh, man, I'm going to listen to the tape and I'm like, damn it, Bobby, you didn't go back to that one spot. Gosh, there was so much that I wanted to extract from what you said, because it was just spot on. The idea of being able to move on, and I guess we'll have to, because I cannot remember that one spot. But anyway, that is huge that you were able to do that. It is a horrible thing that happened to you. And being able to find that strength for yourself and for your son at that time is huge. So let's try to transition, because there's a lot of power in what you said about the chips on your shoulder that got you started. You going after what you want because you want it now is a much bigger desire and a much bigger why. I love that. Where does that take you now? Where are you now? What do you got? What do you have planned for yourself moving forward?
So I am currently a manager with YHB CPAs out of Virginia. I just started with them in December. They are a larger accounting firm, I think within the 150 top within the
top 150.
Country. Yeah, top 150 within the country. Actually, I think it's 120, but something like that. And I am super happy. They're an amazing firm to work for. I work remotely, so I work from home, but I've been given, such welcoming and praise and for my work ethic and the ability to go out and meet people and, bring on my own clients is what fulfills me. So my fulfillment is through the relationships that I can develop with people. So I love accounting, but I could not sit and do 8 hours of accounting for an entire year and be okay.
Right.
Some people can. And I mean, we have, accountants that do that, and they are really good at the work.
Yeah.
Which is always, what is it? A stigmatism or whatever it is about accountants, that they like to sit behind the computer and they don't like people.
Yeah.
And all of that.
Well, there's different personalities for everything.
Yes,
yeah.
A stereotype. Yeah. And so I actually, I was at another job for a year between my firm in Dover and my new firm. And when they first hired me, they were like, "Are you really an accountant?" They were like, "You want to talk to people? You want to go out and meet people? You want to go to these things?" And I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "Well, we don't need you to do that." So that's one of the reasons I wasn't at that firm very long.
Have you ever done a disc assessment?
No.
Oh, really? Okay. I thought for sure Forecasting did those.
A disc assessment?
Yeah. It's each letter stands for something. So D is decisive. I think it's independent. S is stable, and the C is cautious. And it's a personality assessment. And if I were to just off knowing you, I would definitely say you're more of a DI, which is kind of like the leadership type of person. And most of the people that you would imagine would be an accountant would probably be SC.
Yes.
And so anyway, I didn't know if you'd ever done that.
We did some personality tests, but it wasn't that one. But
was it
I'll
with
have
that
to
one?
look that up. No.
No?
I don't think so. I'll have to look that one up because
Okay.
yeah, so
It's interesting.
Truly, I love the accounting work, but I love the relationships and the people. And I need to get out and meet people. And I don't care if we talk about accounting. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I just need that in my life to keep me going. And that fulfills me enough that I can go and do the accounting work. So my experience, my education, my expertise is the accounting work. My love is the people.
Yeah. And so, but you're doing that accounting work for those people that you're building the relationships with.
Yes.
So it makes it matter so much more to you, right?
It does.
Like, could you imagine trying to crunch numbers for just a name on a piece of paper versus somebody that you've talked with? And
I love creating those relationships and being able, I can think of one client right now. She just came on this past tax season. And she is so thankful. Anytime I do something, giving her a call back, she is so thankful. And I mean, she just melts my heart. You know what I mean? Like, this makes me so happy to help her, to be able to get that gratification. Like, she is relieved anytime I do anything. And not all relationships are going to be like that, but those are the ones that make me like, I'm going to get up in the morning because this is what I need in life. I need to help someone in some way. And, maybe in another life I would have been a doctor or something and helped. But I'm just going to be an accountant and help people's taxes and money and their soul. It's
so crazy. I mean, when you have that servant mindset, right, where you want to serve, right, you want to help somebody, we find we can find anything to use to do that. Like, I think that way about roofing, right? I think that with the people that we help, we're saving them from something, we're serving them, we're helping them in so many ways. And so we have a desire to help. We find our ways to help through the things that we end up doing, and so whether you're a doctor or an accountant, you can help a lot of people. And it sounds like you're doing that. I kind of want to go back for a second because I remembered what I wanted to say to you, which is so bizarre how that just popped up while I'm literally talking. But you had said something a little while ago, and it was about, it sucks that we have to go through something super traumatic to learn and to really have a realization afterwards. And I want our listeners to think about that for a second, because whether you've experienced what Kelly has experienced or not, you can still learn through what she's experienced. And I think that when we have so many examples of something like that in front of us or out there for us to find, it becomes our responsibility to hear from those people so that we don't have to experience that traumatic thing for us to have those realizations. And it's almost like when that happens, and it sounds like that's where you're moving towards something that's super important to you, is telling the story, because through that, hopefully somebody doesn't have to go to the hospital and get a cheekbone implant. Yeah.
So my goal is, at first I started I want to help women that have gone through what I have. And then I was like, well, I just want to help women. And then it's well, why am I limited to women? Why could my story not be taken by anyone and seen? So the thing I would say is, if I can do it, anyone can do it. If I can go through something and choose, because it was a choice.
Yeah.
I had a therapist in the very beginning of that situation tell me, she's like, wow, she's like, most women in your position would still be laying in bed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, nobody told me that was an option, because I might be. But it's like, it was a choice I made. I made that choice to use that emotion and build my own power to overcome it. So if I can do that internally, anyone can do that internally. It doesn't have to be a specific person or a specific exact situation as mine, that anyone can use that information to do what they want to in life.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's so big. It's so big. And it's funny. I hear you say like nobody told you could stay in bed. And it's interesting that we can joke about that, but you're right. Think back to your friend who in that same terminal would have laid down and died, in her words, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we are all adults, and like the unfortunate reality is the show will go on whether we want it to or not, most instances. And so that means that we really don't have rocks to hide under. But we can make something different from our life. We can get out from underneath that rock or out of bed and do something different to start to create a life that we don't want to hide from.
Yes.
And I think that part of it is like, it's something it's interesting. I think we all know that we can't run and hide. Like bills are going to find us. Like, you know what I mean? Like the mortgage company's going to find you if you just run and hide for too long.
Your mom, they won't.
She'll come find you. So, but yeah, it's so empowering. I hope that this episode gets out to so many people, because this message needs to be heard. In thinking about your story, like in what you've gone to extract from it, what is like the number one thing that you would say that you're trying to get across through telling your story?
I think, like I just said, that if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah.
If I can,
simple as that.
if I can take it and make something better of my life, if I can my life, I could have lost my life. I mean, 7 years ago, I might have been my last day. My child would have not had parents, because I wouldn't have been here, and his father would not have been in a situation to take care of him. So my child could have been, an orphan. So I think it's just that you can do it, and you have to choose. It's a choice. No one can tell you you can't.
Right.
I have heard my entire life, Kelly, you can't. Kelly, you can't. You can't do that. You can't do this. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. Watch out, And I finally have just decided that I'm not going to live that way. And it was my choice.
No way.
I wouldn't say that, I have any advantage over anyone else. My family, I have a supportive family. I do. They're just very different than me. They're very cautious.
Of course,
and I am not cautious at all. Like I will do anything, like, oh, it's fine. It's cool. Just, my mom says I'm going to put her in an early grave because of that. But
I'm similar in that way. When we were in Cancun last year with Unleash You, there was this huge tower to like people were jumping off of, and there was like levels to it, and I immediately climbed all the way to the top. And I'm not going to say I immediately jumped, because once I got up there, all that confidence I had on the way up was like, bro, you're crazy. But I did jump, and I'll tell you what, if it was up to most of my family, they would have told me don't jump. And so, but like you said, it comes from good intent. The problem is when people are saying you can't, what they mean is I can't.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, all the things that I've leaned on to stop me from doing this now becomes untrue, and I've held back my own life for all the reasons that you just proved were not true.
Yes.
And not really holding us back.
And it took me a little while to figure that out, but now that I have, it's like I'm going, I still will discuss my life decisions with my family. 9 times out of 10, don't expect them to agree with me, but I do discuss it to give them, not really the choice. They don't really have a choice, but to tell them what I'm going to do, and this is what's going to happen. And
so be aware if you get a phone call from a China prison.
So actually, when I missed my flight in South Korea, my mom didn't tell me until like this year, like years later. She was like, I couldn't sleep that night.
Oh, that's so
worried.
wild.
And I was like, I was fine. Like I was totally, like I had no worries. It was cool. I got up. I was like, crap, I'm gonna miss my flight. I rescheduled it. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And she just was so I've learned I will be aware, but I can only take their opinion so far, and I still need to do what I think is best for me.
Yeah. And what's so crazy is when you tell me about your like what you're doing, and this is how I like imagine your family. Like I imagine your family like all on like the edge of their couch or seat, just like watching what Kelly's gonna do next, eating popcorn, like so entertained by the moves that you're making. It's really cool. I want you to understand like how big this is. There are far too many people that really are very dependent on something. It doesn't have to be the extreme that it was for you, but they're just dependent on something somewhere. They can't do this without that. They can't do this without, And so for me, what you're doing is really sending a message to anybody who's thinking that they can't do this because of that, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're showing them like, listen, just get on the plane and just go. Just go. And I tell you, you've intrigued me in that way. Like even conversations with my daughter since your showcase, I know this might sound crazy, but I've literally encouraged her. I'm like, go take a trip. She's 17. She's about to turn 18 in like 3 weeks. And I'm like, go take a trip. Like take a trip. I need you to know what I already know about you, which is you've got everything you need within you right now to take on this world. Yes, you do.
And you learn that. When you do it by yourself, you learn so much. You learn how much you are capable of and that you're capable of more than you thought you were capable of. And there's no way to do it other than to force yourself to do it. You have to force yourself to do it. So anyone, I would always say, if it scares you, then you have to do it.
Ooh, man,
that's what's gonna get you to the next place. Is if it scares you, then it's time you do it.
Oh, I'm taking that message in right now because I know I need to do more than I'm doing right now. Maybe I need to conquer some fears. All right. So honestly, Kelly, this has been an incredible episode. I'm sure that there are questions. I'm going to listen back on this and be like, I wanted to ask this question. So I'd love to have you back on the show to go, probably a little deeper or just a recap and update where you are at that time too. Sure. So before we close, there's one question I ask every guest on the show, and it's just the name of the podcast is the Xtra Mile Podcast, and I'll recap it real quick because it's been a few episodes since I talked about why. One of the moments in my life that changed everything for me was putting on this suit that didn't fit me and showing up at a place that I thought might hire me without an interview or even an application in place and saying to them, I'm here for my job interview. And if I'd have asked anybody, they'd have been like, don't do that. It sounds stupid, right? But it changed my whole life. And so ever since then, I've been on this journey of like, what is it that I'm not yet doing? Like, where on the Xtra Mile am I not going right now to take my life to the next step? And through those examples, I've learned that it's usually something above and beyond. There's a saying that says your success in life will be in direct proportion to what you do after you do what you were expected to do. Mm-hmm. And I've bought into that to the point that we named the podcast that. So the reason for this question is that name a time in your life where you went above and beyond the extra mile, and how it played out for you in your life.
Sure. So I knew this question was coming.
She was prepared much better than some of our other guests.
And I tried and I thought and I kept coming back to one answer. So this is what I'm going with. Every day of my life is an extra mile. 7 years ago, I almost lost my life. And every day since then, I've been given an extra mile and I've done what I can. I get up in the morning. Sometimes that is the extra mile, is getting up in the morning. I take care of my son the best that I can. I find fulfillment in my work through building relationships with my coworkers, my network, my clients. I have an amazing network of friends. I just think that every day for me is a gift and it's an extra mile.
Ooh, man, that's so big. The level of just like overall gratitude for life is crazy in that comment. Thank you so much, Kelly. If I don't know if you're big on social media, but if our listeners wanted to follow you, and since you're going to start telling your story more,
sure,
where should they see that happen, or where would they be able to contact you the best, or watch this?
Our website for YHB CPAs is yhbcpa.com. If you have business questions, my personal Instagram or Facebook should be Kelly Hurd.
Okay. Pretty simple.
Should be. I think so. Yes.
All right. Well, man, Fantastic episode. Guys, thank you for tuning in for this one. I know that this is going to open up some other questions, so be interactive. If you're watching this, be sure to comment. If you're listening to it, be sure to reach out to us and let us know where we can take this conversation next time when Kelly comes on the show. And in that same area, if there are more guests with similar stories that you guys want to hear from, be sure to comment and talk about that as well. Stay tuned for our next episode. We've got a lot of awesome guests lined up. Quantre, who's behind the camera and you guys haven't got to meet yet. I'm going to have him sit across from me one day, though, so you guys get to meet this guy. He's been working really hard on bringing you guys incredible guests, and I want to give him a shout out for that. He's done a great job to keep it scheduled. But we're bringing you guys great guests with again, stories like Kelly's where you've overcome adversity and still been able to accelerate your life in the world of entrepreneurship and as business leaders. So thank you guys all for listening, and stay tuned for the episode next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Xtra Mile Podcast. If you're still listening, that means you learned something or you would have turned this off. So make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Xtra